Apple TV just feels like paying for something you already have. Like seriously, who in their right mind would spend money on that? But with that statement, I was wrong. I ended up buying one. And I get why is that? First, let's start with the system specs and compare them to an ordinary TV or other streaming sticks. As you probably know, TVs are not equipped with a lot of RAM like a PC, which has 16 to 32 plus GB, or phones, which have 8 gigabytes or 12 gigabytes. Usually an ordinary TV has around 1 gigabyte or 1.5 a gigabyte, maybe 2 gigabytes, music, and sometimes it can reach up to 4 gigabytes, right? And those are mostly premium TVs. And you might ask, what's the purpose of RAM in the first place on music TVs? Because on laptops or PCs, that's obvious. Well, on TVs, you don't really think about it. But that RAM is what keeps the system smooth. It's responsible for how fast the interface, music, feels, how quickly apps open, and how well everything runs on the background. When there's only 1 gigabyte, everything starts to lag. Apps take forever to launch, and the whole experience just feels pretty slow. Now, if we compare that to Apple TV, it has around 4 gigabytes in the latest 2022 version, which is standard. And that makes Apple TV work smoothly over the years, just like your iPhone or MacBook. With Apple TV, you're not just limited to watching Netflix or YouTube. You can run multiple apps smoothly, play games, listen to music, and basically do everything you'd expect from a modern device, but just on a big screen. Music and storage is another big thing people don't think about TVs. Most TVs give you something like 4 gigabytes or maybe 16 gigabyte storage, which just fills up almost instantly. I mean, nowadays, 16 gigabytes is nothing. You install a few apps, and that's it. You're done. Apple TV, on the other hand, gives you 64 gigabytes or even 128 gigabytes, depending on the model. I personally went with 164 gigabytes. I suppose that's more than enough for me. So, when it comes to raw performance, Apple TV is on a completely different level compared to any built-in smart TV system. And clearly, that alone already makes it worth it. But that's just the beginning because there are more. And the next thing about Apple TV that people seriously don't talk about enough is the interface. In one word, it's just clean. There's no clutter, no lag, no weird menus. Everything feels smooth and music fast. And a pleasant thing is you don't even think about it. It just works. And clearly, even after years, you probably won't see this thing becoming slow. Just like the old iPhones, as I said earlier, or MacBooks. That's one of the biggest upsides. And this all comes from the specs we talked about earlier, because that power actually translates into real experience. You can watch 4K HDR content smoothly without stutters or delays. And again, this isn't something that will feel good or only for a year or two if you treat them normally and don't break it. But here's the good thing that really made me think differently. Apple TV has 0 ads. Literally none. And I know what you're thinking. You're music thinking, so I'm supposed to pay $150 just to avoid ads? But the reality is you're paying anyway, and nobody gives you convenience for free. Those smart TVs and the cheap streaming sticks, they're full of ads, recommendations, sponsored content, and random trash apps you didn't ask for. Just look at a regular TV remote. Why do I need dedicated Netflix or Prime Video, or even worse, random streaming service button taking up space? It's not a huge problem, sure, but it shows you how everything is built around pushing something onto you. Now compare that to the Apple TV remote. In one word, it is clear. No necessary buttons, no forced shortcuts, just what you actually need. And yeah, I like watching Netflix too, but I don't need it physically built into my remote. I mean, I get it. That's how marketing works. It's not even wrong. But personally, I don't want ads everywhere. I'd rather pay once, get a clean experience, and use it for years instead of constantly being sold something every time I turn on my TV. Because in the end, if you don't pay with money, you're paying with your attention. So, it really comes down to your preference. If you want a smooth, powerful, no ad experience, then spending that extra $150 on an Apple TV after buying your TV actually makes sense. And if not, you'll be still paying, just in a different way. Now, we're going to talk about the best thing about the Apple TV that doesn't. T exists anywhere else, and that's the ecosystem. And excuse me here, but I haven't seen a single company that has made an ecosystem as smooth as Apple. So, there's no doubt about it, I guess. But the best thing is that nowadays most of the planet owns something from Apple. And if you do, that's a good thing because you can use literally any Apple device together on Apple TV. For example, let's take the iPhone. That's probably the best example. And most people own an iPhone for sure. Now, the thing is, if you have one, you can use it for many things. Let me explain. Yeah, there are unofficial ways to install one, but it's way more complicated than it should be. And well, it's Apple, so you don't really get much freedom when it comes to stuff like that. The second thing people might mention is the price. But to be honest, $150 used to feel expensive. Now, it really doesn't in today's market, especially when people are spending anywhere from $800 to $2,000 on a good OLED TV. This actually feels pretty reasonable. So, yeah, it could still be a downside for some people, but definitely not for everyone anymore. And to be clear, that's kind of it. T helps create a more natural and suitable colors for your screen, which is a cool feature because sometimes you don't know what color settings are best. Here, just use your iPhone's front camera. It recognizes the color displayed by the TV and sends that information to the Apple box, adjusting the picture to be warmer or cooler, depending on the content. Fourth, if the remote is lost in a couch, the iPhone has a function that helps you find it by indicating hot or cold, depending on the distance. If you're close, it shows hot. I try to find more negative. I even looked into it deeper, but there's nothing major that really stands out. All right, quick thing before we finish. I want to promote my Discord. Why not? If you haven't joined yet, now is the perfect time because before we hit 100K subscribers on YouTube, we're giving out a special role to early members. Right now, we're sitting at around 350 plus members. Let's push it to 1,000 and make it something big. The link is in the description if you don't know. So, yeah, I think that's a perfect place to end the video. Thanks for watching and take care.